At Tzu Chi recycling stations closed down temporarily, volunteers clean up the environment. We take a look at the origin of Tzu Chi's eco-friendly blanket. Welcome to the Headlines. I'm Siri Su. Thank you for joining us. During the pandemic period, Tzu Chi recycling stations and recycling points in Taiwan have stopped operation. Volunteers seized the opportunity to clean up and disinfect the recycling stations. They also clean up their homes to help ease the pandemic. Let's take a look. As the pandemic is severe, volunteers put on their masks as they clean up the recycling station.
After washing it, scrub it so it will be cleaner. This way, water won't accumulate here and there won't be pests.
Volunteers use machine to spray diluted hypochlorous acid in the large area. They also use bottle disinfectant to clean the small corners.
As we use handheld disinfectant, we can reach the corners. With the machine, you cannot reach the small corners.
As the recycling stations closed down, the volunteers also stopped leaving recyclables at recycling points.
Basically, we stopped placing recyclables at the recycling points. There's no need to collect them. Because we are afraid of bacteria, we do not know where the recyclables come from. We're used to doing recycling. When we do not do it, we do not know what to do. We wash the items at home and disinfect them when there is the need.
As Tzu Chi's recycling stations and recycling points closed down temporarily, volunteers seized the opportunity to disinfect the places to help ease the pandemic. During the pandemic, police officers have taken on the role of assisting and guiding citizens. Therefore, they have a high chance of contracting the virus. The Tzu Chi Police Association brought face shields for police officers in New Taipei City and Zhonghe Police Station. They want to assist frontline police officers in their efforts to protect the people.
Working together to open COVID prevention supplies, the footsteps of care brought by Tzu Chi Police Association never stopped. The New Taipei City Police Department is located at the hotspot of COVID cases, Banqiao District. Thus, Tzu Chi volunteers delivered 900 face shields in hopes of aiding frontline police officers.
We have descended to 5 teams: the traffic team, criminal police team, mobile division, women's and children's protection division, and the juvenile affairs division. We hope that volunteers from Kaohsiung may help us in our efforts to support frontline police officers.
Upon receiving face shields, police officers are fully equipped as they feel more comfortable on duty. In the past, there were citizens who fell ill on the road, and we discovered that the person actually had COVID-19. The interaction exposes our colleagues to the possibility of receiving the virus. I just wore the face shields. It's very comfortable and safe. Thank you, Tzu Chi. At the hotspot of COVID cases, Zhonghe Precinct received 100 face shields from Tzu Chi volunteers. After interacting with high-risk individuals, some of our colleagues have also contracted COVID-19. I'm thankful to Tzu Chi brothers and sisters for giving us face shields. As the pandemic situation in Taiwan worsened, police officers work under a heavier shift. Tzu Chi volunteers arrive with supplies in hopes of supporting frontline police officers.
Facing the serious pandemic, Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital Superintendent Zhao Youchen holds meetings every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. Besides understanding the patient's conditions, he also wants to plan and inspect the hospital's COVID prevention SOP. In addition, Superintendent Zhao Youchen works until 1 o'clock in the morning in hopes of bringing sincere care to patients.
5月7日到5月24日，分布以新北市154例，台北市49例。
As the pandemic got more serious starting this May, Taipei Tzu Chi Hospital started to receive COVID-19 contracted patients, and as many medical staff have previously gained experience over the course of 1 year. The superintendent once again led medical staff creating 5 sections while increasing the amount of medical beds.
We have a lot of people here who are not in the pulmonology department or in the infectious disease division. So during the training process, we must remind them a lot. But because there are a lot of things that require communication, and I feel that we have to care for them more in order to reduce the communication period, and for them to make decisions on the spot.
这个孕妇被送到那家医院的时候呢，又被退票了，因为他们觉得他们没有办法处理一个孕妇， 所以我们又在承担。
One day, the hospital received a COVID-19 patient who's also pregnant at the same time.
我看她坐在轮椅上啊，
I saw her sitting on a wheelchair. She was also carrying a blanket along with simple luggage. This made my heart ache
就是很心疼啊，因为也没有家人可以陪。
because she has no family members around. Both of her lungs appear to be infiltrated, so if things don't work out, she has to undergo intubation.
如果再不行的话，就要插管了。
Facing potential COVID patients, medical staff must be fully prepared in order to keep both parties safe. Due to this, the team has discussed necessity, SOP making the best decisions under the possibility of an emergency.
新北市因为疫情非常的严重，他们昨天在户外的筛检站就筛到超过50个阳性，加上各医院送到 CDC 确诊 PCR 阳性的，那都是加起来都超过100多位。
Facing COVID-19, frontline medical staff must work seriously as they're the ones who hold and defend against the virus.
急诊的病人是不是都已经
Patients in ICU already have rooms, and we also consider disinfecting the medical beds. Today, we think about how many patients contracted COVID-19 and eat dinner around 9 to 10 p.m., working until 1 a.m. Then we wake up to work again. Last time when Mayor Hoyoyi visited, he told me that I look thinner. That's right, I've reduced 3 kilograms in weight.
Speaking lightheartedly on the fact that he lost weight due to a heavy work schedule, Superintendent Zhao Youchen is responsible for the safety and well-being of his colleagues. He also hopes they have more patients in need.
我们如果能够多抢救一个，
If we can save one more life,
一小珍贵的生命就可以得以保全，一个家
then we
庭
may
就可以
keep a whole family. So we will try our best to get patients in for
尽可能
treatment.
地让病人能够方便的得到就医的机会。
As the pandemic worsened, each second became precious, as besides making key decisions, a strong will is also required. Let us hope that Superintendent Zhao Youchen leads his team to help more people in need. For many parents, a troubling issue will be their child not eating properly or eating foods they prefer. Not only does bad eating habits affect child growth, it also decreases their immune system. In Malaysia's Kuala Lumpur, a nutritionist said that children eat too much snacks and have poor eating habits. Fortunately, the nutritionist has a few tips for the parents.
According to Malaysia's Ministry of Health, 1/3 of children in Malaysia are below nutritional standard. The director of a child care center discovered that children's unbalanced nutrition is mainly caused by being picky.
他们就只选择性吃肉。
They choose to eat meat, and when they see vegetables, they'll dump it into the trash. They're very against the smells of bitter melon and onions.
比方说苦瓜，或者是洋葱。
Being picky with food will severely impact children's intellectual and physical growth, as it will also cause constipation issues.
每天用肚子痛来做借口。
Every day they will say that they have stomachache and stay in the bathroom for half an hour. Some even stay in the bathroom for an hour and then cried. The child will come out full of sweat while having a pale face.
Ultimately, though the quality of life is elevated, but due to the large variety of food in Malaysia, children are deeply impacted as it makes them more picky.
我觉得马来西亚的小孩，他们最大的一个错误饮食在于。
I think that children in Malaysia have a big mistake in their eating habits. They eat too much junk food as they cannot filter it in a short time. Since children have a small appetite, if today they eat less nutritious food in order to satisfy their hunger, it will affect their capacity to intake nutritious foods.
他们吃到很多有营养的东西。
In order to avoid food pickiness, we must start from practical education, guiding the child back to a normal diet. During education, we must tell the child why and encourage them to eat fruits first. Mainly, they won't reject this idea, or you could add vegetables and fruits into their favorite foods. For example, the child likes yogurt. Since it's sweet, in this case, you don't have to worry about adding fruits into the mix, and the child will have less resistance towards fruits. Putting more effort on cuisine, Tzu Chi International School in Kuala Lumpur has hired chefs to cook delicious meals for children.
孩子到底喜不喜欢，就是以每天。
It's obvious to see that children like and don't like based on the food waste each day, so if a certain food has more leftovers, then we'll try to modify it by the color, shape, and seasonings.
调配方式在做改变。
Using colorful, interesting foods, the interesting menu has led children to eat more.
可能是红萝卜他们不爱嘛，我们就把它
If children don't like carrots, then we'll make carrot foams and add it into soup and vegetables. If they don't like to eat celery, then we'll present it in a pasta dish.
Besides nutritious meals at school, at home, the parents must guide their children more.
很多时候带入孩子去接
You should guide your child to interact with vegetables and fruits. For example, a parent wants to make a pizza, and if they want to put green peppers on it, or maybe onions, they can let their children participate in the food making process and allow them to creatively do whatever they want. Through cooking together, parents have deepened their children's knowledge on nutrition, as it will definitely help the child balance their diet.
City volunteers collect PET bottles, which are turned into eco-friendly blankets. These blankets are given to disaster victims. Thus far, Tzu Chi has given out nearly 200,000 blankets to 44 countries. First, approximately 1.5 kilograms of PET is turned into fabric by dye technology. Then the fabric is moved to Tzu Chi neighborhood grounds for assembly and sewing. Have you heard of the start of Tzu Chi's blankets, though? It began 52 years ago when a huge fire tore through a village in Taiwan. 42 people died and over 200 were injured in the fire. Back then, Tzu Chi had only been established for 3 years. Since there were no volunteers in Taiwan just yet, Master Zheng Yan led a team of volunteers from Hualien to Taiwan to give them blankets. In the early days, Tzu Chi's blanket was outsourced. It wasn't until 2008 that dye technology was asked to make eco-friendly blankets. Currently, these blankets have helped countless disaster survivors.
52 years ago, during Typhoon Elsie, a fire broke out in Danan village of Taidong's Beinan Township due to an accident.
The fire started at the top of the village and burned downwards. All the homes were torched.
When the fire happened, I was still very young. I just remembered the entire village lined up with red coffins, and I heard a lot of people crying.
When that disaster happened, the Tzu Chi Foundation had only been established for 3 years.
大家都说我们没有钱啊，如何救啊？没有钱也要想办法。我们呢，要共为一心，为了这个村庄呢，我们来付出。
When Dharma Master Zheng Yan heard of the news, she couldn't bear the villagers being out in the cold. Thus, she personally led a team of volunteers to visit Taidong from Hualien. They spent 5 hours traveling by train and conducted Tzu Chi's first ever large-scale disaster relief. Back then, they gave out 148 blankets by Formosa carpet, which was considered the best quality blanket around.
The ground was cold at night, so we folded the blanket Tzu Chi gave in half. Half was used as bedding, the other half was covering. Everyone slept together on the ground. It was pretty cozy.
Tzu Chi came to give us aid supplies, such as blankets. I'm thankful for Tzu Chi's support.
Danan village sounds very similar to Big Disaster Village. Thus, after that fire, the name was changed to Dongxing Village. Love and hope rise from the ashes. In the past, when Su Meilian looked at blankets, she would shiver with anxiety.
My blankets caught on fire, and I suffered burns on my legs. Then all I could remember was being in the hospital.
After getting to know Tzu Chi, Su was able to look past the pain of the fire.
When the fire happened, I was very young and didn't know how to read, but I would also look at the Tzu Chi blankets we received and stare at the logo and the embroidery strip. Later, I felt I needed to reciprocate and be a volunteer too.
你叫
苏美莲，
你叫
陈美莲，从小都认识，
从小认识，
对，吃的很简单，然后
Both named Meilian, both are Rukai people. The two were playmates when young, and now Su Meilian is grateful to Chen Meilian for the opportunity to help her.
When my husband passed, Tzu volunteers came to present me with a blanket, and it was winter then, so I was glad to have it. It felt good to have two, so I can wash one while still using the other.
10 years ago, Chen Meilian's husband passed away accidentally, and Tzu Chi volunteers kept her company. Last year, after she had kidney transplant surgery, the volunteers visited even more frequently.
There are still plenty of disadvantaged families in Taiwan who need help.
Volunteer Liu Meizhu has recruited many local residents to become a Tzu Chi volunteer. She continues to plant seeds in this remote country region.
Tzu volunteers gave me a friendly vibe, and they are very hospitable. I really like that feeling.
A team of Tzu Chi volunteers care for the elderly in the village so that Dongxing village is very lively and spirited. Opening up the book, Liu Meizhu says it was here that she realized where kindness began.
Growing up, I would always hear the elders talk about the big disaster, but I never understood how that related to Tzu Chi. It was until I read this book.
When Master Zheng Yan was in cultivation in Taidong Luye, the roof of the room she slept had holes, so she would curl up inside her blanket with Dharma Master Shoudao to keep warm at night. She knew then the importance of the warm blanket in the middle of the night.
As someone who has experienced suffering in her life, Master Zheng Yan hopes to bring a little bit of love and warmth to the suffering in all corners of the world. This little girl who was shivering before gave a big smile as the blanket was draped on her. Volunteers respectfully presented the blanket to disaster victims. These blankets are made in Taiwan. During the wintry days, volunteers processed the blankets one by one to help international relief aid. 180,000 Tzu Chi blankets arrived in Jordan. Without their belongings, these survivors were glad to have Tzu Chi's blankets to keep warm at night. At the rescue site, Tzu Chi's blankets warmed up the frontline workers. In the past 18 years, Tzu Chi's eco-friendly blanket has reached 44 countries. In total, 1.17 million pieces were given out to those in need. The affinity started by the blanket has never left.
When our village had problems, Tzu Chi volunteers came to help us. This is why many villagers have become Tzu Chi volunteers.
It's the continuation of love, that's interaction between people. We must care for one another and help each other.
A former disaster survivor has become a current volunteer. It's the warmth of the blanket that has turned love into strength.
To mark Vesak Day, or the day the Buddha attained Buddhahood, IBS has held an online prayer ceremony. Tzu Chi has also been invited to participate in the event. Dharma Master Zheng Yan has delivered her best wishes through a video. Let's take a look.
近来心总是那样的悲痛哀戚，难以言喻。看到了这一波疫情笼罩全球，已经1年多了到现在呢，好像越来越顶峰，越来越高，到底呢要升级到什么程度？平安人要去救拔苦难人，有形的资源给 更需要的无形的，但是呢，非表达出来不可，那就是虔诚，那就是要用斋戒的表达，真诚的要护生、爱生。想想，在地球上呢，78亿多的人口，每1秒钟呢有2500多的动物进入了嘴巴，一年当中呢800多亿的生命总是这样消失掉，这样的吃它，那只不过是贪口欲而已哦，不是对人的生命健康有帮助。现在啦，疫情这样的严重，就是要警惕了我们人，要赶快改变一个方式的生活，从那样的纷乱的心态，那样的意念升高的习惯，是否把它转变过来，转荤如素？现在的灵方妙药，转荤如素，这就是智慧。真的，我们的社会人间呐，才会快速恢复到了健康，恢复到了以往的自由。我的心，我们大家要启发一念虔诚无私的爱，大家呢来共同付出，期待天地之间呐，风调雨顺呐，病气消弭啦，疫情消弭，真的总是需要度过这样的时间。要度过呢，就是要人心要真正的和复谐起来。化解恶念结善缘，祈求天下无灾，岁岁年年。
In Chile, since the pandemic broke out, Tzu volunteers have carried out aid distributions to help affected families. We'll leave you with these images. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.